for where you stand in the spectrum over there. But we are going to talk about the impact of such global political situations on global business. This is relevant practically for everyone. Those of you who are looking to make a career in global finance, business, supply chain operations, marketing, you name the field, right? Our life is impacted by oil. So this has relevance or implications to all of us. And we are going to talk about the impact of such global political situations like the Russia and Ukraine conflict on global businesses and global businesses through the impact of oil as well. As I said, we are speaking to Dr. Robert Weiner, who is a professor of international business, public policy, public administration, and international affairs at the George Washington University School of Business. He's also the program director of the International Business Department, which has been ranked #1 by the Financial Times multiple times, especially in 2001 and 2002. He teaches international finance, economics, and strategy, and he's been with GW, the George Washington University, since 1994, serving as a chairman of the International Business Department between 2001 and 2005, and then again from 2013 till 2016. Before I hand over all of you to Dr. Weiner to take us through his presentation and talk to us about the impact of the Russia-Ukraine conflict on global affairs, I quickly want to run our poll for the evening, our first poll for the evening, which is live on your screen right now. The question that we are asking you is, what percentage of current US energy needs are fulfilled by fossil fuels? So I have around 183 people in the room right now, and it would be great to see over 100 of you respond to this particular poll. According to you, and this could be your best guess, or if you know this, great. According to you, what percentage of current US energy needs? I will confess that the data that I have is still 2021, so still very relevant. According to you, what percentage of US energy needs are fulfilled by fossil fuels? And by fossil fuels, I mean everything. This includes oil, natural gas, coal, any such fossil fuel. According to you, what percentage of current US energy needs are fulfilled by such fossil fuels? I'm going to keep this poll live for another few seconds. So if you haven't yet responded, please do. It would be great to see what your current knowledge is. And this could be your best guess for the time being. So if you're not aware, then let us know. Just take your best guess. Let us know, according to you, what percentage of US energy needs are fulfilled by fossil fuels. Okay. I do have around 60 responses. I want to give this another few seconds before I wrap it up and hand over the session to Dr. Weiner. So if you haven't responded, if you're dialing in from your cell phone, you would have to click on the three buttons at the bottom right of your screen, the three dots at the bottom right of your screen. Click on that, you'd be able to see, click on the polls from there, and you'd be able to respond to the poll from there. So if you haven't yet responded, I'm going to keep this live for another few seconds. Do let us know, according to you, what percentage of current US energy needs are fulfilled by fossil fuels. Okay, with that, I'm going to end this poll. And I'm not going to share the results right now. I'm going to hand over the session to Dr. Weiner now. In his presentation, he's going to show the data. And at that time, we will see if your guess was correct or if you're way off the mark. With that, over to you, Dr. Weiner. We look forward to your presentation.
Thank you, Sanjay. I'm going to share my screen. Can people see the screen okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay, perfect. All right. So first, thank you all so much for giving us some of your time this evening. I'm a professor in international business, and I'm the faculty director of our Master of Science in International Business program. Sanjay mentioned that we were ranked #1 in 2001, 2002. We were actually ranked #1 in 2020 and 2021. And then after that, the Financial Times that ranked us #1 in the United States and #2 in the world stopped ranking individual programs. So hopefully at some point they'll go back to ranking and we'll get our #1 back. But in the meantime, they are mostly focusing on something else these days. After all, their jobs to sell newspapers. What I'd like to talk about is what's going on in the world in terms of the oil market. And I teach a course called Oil Industry Economy Security Society, which is a multidisciplinary course taught to master's students, primarily Masters of Business Administration and Master of Science in our various programs. And all I've done is excerpted some slides from this course. Because this course is about the world, We change the course each year, and the focus this year is on the implications of the global oil disruption, but there is a broader context. So we're going to be looking at the consequences for the global petroleum environment of the Russian invasion of Ukraine, but we're going to be looking at it in the shadow of the evolution worldwide from fossil fuels to renewables, and whatever opportunities and threats there are for business and government. Because I'm a business school professor, I'll be focusing on business, but government is very much involved in the petroleum industry in every country. And so one aspect of international business is you have to deal with government, both your home government and your host government, wherever you're operating. We'll start a little bit with the evolution of fossil fuels, but then we'll focus on what's going on in the world oil market now. Just to talk about where fossil fuels are going and have been, on the left, you see a picture of world energy consumption. You see it going up a lot, even in the last 20 years. And the green, red, and gray parts of the diagram, the biggest parts by far are all fossil fuels: oil, natural gas, and coal. You see the same chart on the right. Some people don't like different types of charts, and the three major fuels that are used in the world are the top three, which are all fossil fuels. For the United States, the dominance of fossil fuels is even greater. And so, Sanjay, can we put up the results of our poll?
Sure, they are live on the screen right now.
Okay.
Majority of those who did participate actually got it wrong.
Okay, so it looks like most people thought that it was about 60%. Okay, can you take it down? Let's see. Oh, I guess we do have to close it on. Let me see if I can close. Okay, yeah, if you look at the part of this screen, you'll see that fossil fuels are almost 80% of all the energy consumed in the United States. And on that to the right, you see a percentage share, and on the left, you see the tremendous increase in energy consumption in the United States over the last 250 years. You can get a sense of why global warming is important and why it comes from energy when you see a gigantic increase in energy consumption, even in relatively recent times. So the United States and the world is using much more energy, and that makes energy a much bigger issue for world business and for world government. Okay, let me go to the next slide. Okay, I want to talk about oil specifically. And one of the reasons that I studied the oil market as a business school professor is that's where the money is. This is a picture of the size of the oil market in terms of value. And this is a picture that shows you the value of all the oil sold in the world, which was, you read as 1,720 billion or $1.7 trillion, vastly exceeds the value of all the gold sold in the world, plus iron, plus copper, plus every other metal. And so if you talk about the importance of the oil market, the importance of the oil market is very firmly founded in money. And this is the business school, so we're always very concerned about the financial aspects of everything, and I'll be talking about that today. The reason we have a whole course about oil is because oil is where the action is. If you look at the effect of the focus on oil in recent months associated with world events, you can see the impact on two major companies. The dark line here is the value of the largest US company, the largest oil company in the world that's completely private, Exxon. And you can see that the value of Exxon as a company has gone up tremendously just in the last year or two, more than double. At the same time, Tesla, which is a maker of electric vehicles, value has gone up tremendously and then gone down tremendously. So this is just a business reflection of the fact that oil is important and likely to continue to be important. The value of any company, as we teach in our finance courses, is mostly about its future profit opportunities. The value of a company is not much in the value of its plant and equipment. It's in the value of the earnings that it's going to earn in the future. And you can see that people have raised their expectations about Exxon's value because they expect Exxon to be a lot more profitable in the future than they did even a year ago. We turn to Russia. because that's one of the focuses here, where this is not a political talk, as Sanjay meant. We're talking about the effects for business. The Russian economy is very, very focused on natural resources. This shows you a picture of the natural resources across the bottom, and then where the natural resources are exported to vertically. And you can see that more than half of all Russian exports in the period before the pandemic consists of oil, gas, and coal. And then the other Russian exports are closely related to natural resources. They're wood, materials, and metals. So in some sense, Russia is a classic natural resource country. And understanding Russia's behavior, we're going to put it in a perspective of behavior of natural resource-rich countries, both at home and on the world stage. I'm going rather quickly through the slides because of limited time, but the slide deck will be available for you to look at your leisure afterwards. Okay. If you talk about the relationship between the Russian economy and natural resources, this is the value of the Russian stock market. In the light color and in the dark color is the value of oil as measured by Brent, the internationally traded oil. And up until the Russian invasion, those two tracked each other almost perfectly. The value of the Russian stock market was pretty much the value of oil. And it's only in the time period since the invasion that these two things have diverged. And so this tells you a bit about the relation about Russia as a natural resource dependent country. If you look at the effect of individual companies in this time period, this picture shows you the stock prices of different companies. The two lines at the bottom are the value of the Russian largest oil and gas companies, Rosneft and Gazprom. And the -40 on the right-hand side indicates that these companies have lost 40% of their value since the start of the crisis early last year. At the same time, private companies Shell, based in the UK, and Exxon, based in the US, have increased their value greatly. The third, and in some sense, most interesting group of countries are national oil companies, companies majority owned by the state in various countries. And so the largest oil company in the world in terms of value is Aramco, the state company of Saudi Arabia. And its value has risen and then fallen. So it has not gained at all from higher oil prices, unlike the private companies. And the other company that's shown here is Petrobras, the national oil company of Brazil, which has fallen in value. So one question we ask in this course is, what difference does it make to a company's strategy and to a company's performance and a company's value when their majority owner is the state? And what is in general the relationship between the ownership of a company and its strategy and its performance? These are things that was sort of the bread and butter of what we discuss in international business and our other business programs. And it must be true that being owned by the state has a different effect on your performance than being owned by private shareholders. Otherwise, you wouldn't see an enormous decline, enormous divergence between the value of private companies and the value of state companies that you see in this diagram. These are huge companies worth billions of US dollars. And the private companies have gained enormously and the state companies have not. And that goes back to the question of what is the state's objective as an owner rather than just as a government, as a regulator. That's one of the things about business school that's quite different from other forms of education. We look at the effect of the state on the performance of private business. If we look at the example of a state company, what drives competition between state companies? I lifted this slide from a presentation by ONGC Videsh. ONGC Videsh is the foreign subsidiary of the Oil and Natural Gas Corporation of India, ONGC, the largest oil company in India, and a company that is majority owned by the government of India. And so it would fall in the same group with the previous slide with Petrobras and with Saudi Aramco. And you can see that ONGC is not just a company that operates in India. ONGC operates around the world. And this is simply a diagram that I pasted from their presentation, whose URL is on the left. You see that ONGC operates not quite worldwide, but in very many areas, in very many projects around the world, and therefore competes directly with private companies, whether they're from the United States or Australia or any other country. And one of the questions is, well, in ONGC's competition with private companies, how well does ONGC do? I don't know the answer to that offhand, but that's the kind of question that our students work on for their projects. I'm going to take a step back and ask about Russia as a country that attacked greenish blue color, and the least peaceful countries in the world in red, in red on the right. And you can see that, all I did was paste the top 10 most peaceful countries and the top 10 least peaceful countries. And you'll see that Russia is among the top 10 least peaceful countries. But more importantly, of the top 10 least peaceful countries around the world, a majority of them are oil countries, countries whose economy is dominated by oil. And in the top 10 most peaceful countries, almost none of these countries are countries whose economy is dominated by oil. And that leaves the question that perhaps Russia is not so different from other oil countries. Thought that people might want to know where the United States ranks here. And the United States, right, I put down at the bottom, ranks closer to the bottom than the top. And one question that you might ask is, perhaps the United States is not a peaceful country because of all its oil. That's one of the questions that we explore in our course. So one thing about business education, we look at relationships between business and society and the rest of, and the government, and trying to understand, especially in international business, the environment in different countries is essential to our style of education. If you look at specific examples, here are some bar charts just showing you how likely a country is to get involved in militarized dispute with the petrostates, oil states in a light color and all other countries in a dark color. And you can see that oil countries are both more likely to attack other countries, but they're also more likely to be attacked. And so this is not just random. And one of the questions is, what are the implications for business of, and especially for natural resources business, of being involved in countries that by their very structure tend to be more violent? If you look at the money side from oil, you look at Russian military spending. Russian military spending is the light line, and you can see that it went up steadily over a long period of time. This is a time period in which oil prices mostly increased. There's not a perfect relationship, but in general, more oil means more money for the government, which means more military expenditures. And perhaps it's not surprising that Russia chose to attack its neighbor at a time when oil and gas prices were high and the Russian treasury had a lot of money. You ask about sanctions. The US and other Western countries have imposed sanctions on Russia. How effective are these sanctions likely to be? In the past, these sanctions were not effective. These diagrams show that when Russia invaded Ukraine in 2014 and seized the Crimean Peninsula, the effect of the sanctions on Russia on their production, shown in the upper part of the graph, were invisible. There was no effect. And at the same time, even as the oil price went down in the latter part of the last decade, Russian oil companies made even more money because they were selling oil in dollars and their costs were in rubles, in which the price of oil effectively went up a great deal. In terms of what's going on now, there's been little effect on Russian oil production of the current sanctions, but there's been a big decrease in the amount of money that Russia gets for each barrel of oil that it's sold. And so the right part of this diagram compares an international price with the price of Russian oil, called euros. And the gap between those two is money that's not going to the Russian treasury as a result of the invasion. Before the invasion, those two prices were basically moved together. You look at Iran as an example of sanctions. Sanctions on Iran have been very effective in reducing Iranian production and Iranian exports. And so one question we ask is all of these sanctions are actually implemented by companies? What effect of these are the effect of companies, and what determines whether sanctions are effective? We don't have all the answers, but in the US style of education, we spend as much time talking about the questions through case studies as we do about the answers, because we're more interested in getting people to know how to think about things rather than getting to any specific answer. Very different tradition from some other parts of the world. We talk about energy, take a step back, energy security. Energy security can be approached from a variety of different perspectives. And up in the top, I've pasted a book that I edited called Oil Shock. And I would be trying to sell copies of my book, except this book was published in 1984. And we're going to be having 40th anniversary celebration next year, but it's long since I've received any royalties at all, and the few remaining copies are probably in museums. Oil has domestic consequences. Here are pictures of protests about high oil prices in 3 countries, the United States, Zimbabwe, and France. And in the bottom, here's a picture of the Niger Delta in Nigeria and some of the militants associated with oil and protecting oil in the Niger Delta. So oil has domestic social consequences as well as geopolitical consequences, and those consequences then affect oil companies profoundly. If you might imagine being a manager of an oil company and looking out your window and seeing one of these protests and figuring out what you should do with it or do about it. If you ask about where oil is and why oil is so unstable and volatile, oil is concentrated in a very few countries. Here's a cumulative chart that shows that 8 countries account for over 3/4 of the total oil underground worldwide. And those countries are listed on the right. Most of these countries have had episodes of instability politically or dictatorship or conflict with neighbors. Of the world's roughly 200 countries, about 120 of them have no oil at all. So oil is very concentrated, which means it's more likely to be involved in political conflicts and economic conflicts. Natural gas, in contrast, is not one market. Natural gas is very regional. The right picture shows you the price of natural gas over the last few months. And in Europe and Asia, the price of natural gas has gone up tremendously, while the US, it has not. This is because there's no one market for natural gas. And one of the things we study in our course is evolution of markets and the result of shocks on markets. And this also leads to potential opportunities for US companies to export natural gas by liquefying it, LNG, to European and Asian importing countries. Here is a picture of actual pattern of US gas exports over the last few months. Exports to Asia are in red in the bottom, and you can see that exports to Asia have gone down a lot from 2021 to 2022 and been replaced by exports to Northwest Europe, which is in the dark color, and to the rest of Europe, which is in the orange color. The result is much less gas going to Asia. The gas is going to Europe instead, and that has to do with the opportunities for US oil gas exporters because of the sanctions on Russia. And so the result of this shock worldwide is to rearrange trade patterns for oil and gas, and those have consequences for oil and gas importing countries. Here is an example. Here's some consequences for Asia. So the left diagram shows that there's been a big decrease in India and smaller decreases in Bangladesh and Pakistan in terms of natural gas imports, because natural gas has become more expensive as a result of the invasion, and also associated with the depreciation of the rupee and other currencies, South Asian currencies, against the US dollar. And then on the right side, you can see that that's actually led to less electricity being generated from gas in South Asia, because gas has become more expensive associated with the Russian invasion. I gave this example only to show you that an invasion far away has implications at home, whether they be for the United States in terms of export opportunities, or for Indian companies that are facing higher import prices for oil and gas. If you look at what has happened, India has reversed its decline in coal utilization since in the last few months because of the increase in gas prices. Coal utilization had been used, coal had been used in electricity firing at a very high rate. And you can sort of see seasonal variation, and that decline has been reversed, associated with gas becoming less competitive. China has also increased its use of coal, and not too surprisingly, India, China have increased their emissions of greenhouse gases. So this has implications for the environment as well as implications for the economy of natural resource exporting and natural resource importing countries. We then ask the question, is it a good idea to be energy independent? Maybe if India were energy independent, it wouldn't have to worry about all of these things. Every president of the United States has said, we will be energy independent and we don't like buying energy from importers because it affects our energy security. And here's just some quotes. Most recently from President Biden, the current US president: to protect our economy over the long term, we need to become energy independent. But presidents from across the political spectrum have said the same thing about energy security. Whenever you have an agreement about politicians, it makes professors like me doubtful. When politicians all agree, it means that they're more likely to be wrong, which we'll come to in a moment. One thing about being energy dependent, it might restrict your foreign policy. So this is a cartoon where this old man is called Uncle Sam, the symbol of the United States, in which he says America is the freest nation on earth, except when the United States is dependent on oil. And one of the questions is, how does dependence on oil affect countries' ability to operate in the international sphere? The United States, because of the shale boom, has basically become energy independent. And so the United States still imports crude oil, but it now exports petroleum products made from crude oil, refined from crude oil. And so the United States has just recently become energy independent, and that then might affect its foreign policy, including its behavior toward Russia, which is really outside the scope of our meeting today. And the United States trade deficit, which is the balance of payments for the United States, which has been in deficit for many, many years. The energy component of the trade deficit has disappeared. The United States used to be a huge net energy importer in terms of dollars, and now the United States is basically balanced on trade and energy, and the trade deficit comes from other parts of the economy. Meanwhile, India has become more and more dependent on imported oil, because Indian oil production has not changed in 20 years. At the same time, economic growth in India has led to steady increases in consumption. We only see the dip associated with the lockdowns associated with the pandemic. Other than that, you could draw almost a straight regression line showing almost constant increase in Indian consumption and therefore increase in Indian imports. Is foreign dependence for India bad? And one of the questions is, well, should countries try to be independent? And here is an imaginary speech that says, from an imaginary US president: my fellow Americans, for too long, the United States has been at the mercy of foreign interests. We remain far too dependent on this important commodity. I speak of course, of our complete dependence on coffee that we're importing mainly from Brazil and Colombia. It's time to wean ourselves from this harmful addiction. The idea of this slide is to make politicians look foolish when you think about business. Economists like me tend to talk about the benefits of free trade. The United States benefits from the fact that coffee is produced less expensively abroad than the United States. And so cutting off coffee imports would hurt the economy in the same way that oil is produced less expensively outside the United States than inside the United States. So this slide is designed to have students think again about whether our policies really make sense and what the impact on American business might be. And then we ask the question, does it even matter who the suppliers for India are? So this shows you a picture on the left, a pie chart showing that before the invasion, India's main suppliers of crude oil were number 1, Iraq, number 2, Saudi Arabia, number 3, UAE, all countries close to India geographically, so that the cost of transporting oil to India was very low. But then the right side shows the recent trend, which shows that Russia is now the largest supplier of oil to India. And basically that's come at the expense of countries that were the main exporters. This shows you Iraq and Saudi Arabia. So you might imagine that the oil companies of Iraq and Saudi Arabia are not too happy to have competition from Russia, especially because Russian oil is being sold at a big discount, which is hurting the business of these companies. So again, geopolitics matters for business. And these charts are showing you things to talk about. And the way that we do our style of teaching is we don't just lecture. We spend a lot of time discussing the implications. It's more work for students, but they learn a lot more than countries where professors basically lecture and students basically write things down. Our whole class is called a seminar, and that means that it's designed to get people to think. It's less important to get to the right answer than it is to be able to think systematically about it. And the way we do this is by practicing and talking about what these charts mean. And there can be a lot of disagreement, but disagreement is a good way for people to learn. As a result, I think we'll skip this because of time. You can look at this at your leisure. Every conflict has winners as well as losers. And so this is an advertisement by Canadian oil producers saying that the United States should buy more oil from them. But they made it look like the reason that Americans should buy more oil from them is because it's the right thing to do. And this shows the Canadian flag and how great Canada is, and therefore the United States oil importing companies should buy oil from Canada. So this is an effort by Canada to use the war in Ukraine to boost its oil business. We'll kind of end here and look at the volatility of oil prices. Oil prices go up and down tremendously. One of the things we cover in the course is the causes. Why are oil prices so volatile? And we also talk about the effects. We talked about the effects just today, just in the context of the Russian invasion of Ukraine, but there are much broader effects that extend over long periods of time to many countries and companies, and we talk about them more systematically. We'll end by talking about looking forward and ask, and this is the last slide I'll show, and says, where are oil prices going? When I tell people that socially that I teach about oil, they're really mostly interested in knowing whether oil prices are going up or down. So this is a current slide made this month. The left part of the slide shows the past prices of oil and how volatile they are in terms of dollars per barrel. The right side shows you the forecast. And the forecast is that the price of oil will decline slightly over the rest of this year and through 2024, with the expectation that by the end of this year, the price will be roughly $75 per barrel. And I don't know if people can see the cursor on this, but that's this, if you can, that's this point. Oh, let's see, this point right here. I didn't mean to do that. So $75 per barrel. What I want to focus on is the uncertainty. People, the top and bottom part of this slide shows you the 95% confidence interval. That means that the people who expect, the market expects the price at the end of this year will be $75 per barrel, but they're 95% sure that the price will be at least $40 per barrel, and they're 95% sure that the price will be less than $150 per barrel. If you're 95% sure that the price of the most important commodity in the world will be somewhere between $40 a barrel and $150 a barrel, that's an enormous divergence and makes it very, very difficult. We talk about what you can do about this and also why the divergence is so great. So I think we'll stop there because of time. Let me stop sharing and go to the next part. Okay, and that gives you, just to finish up, this gives you a flavor of the type of thing that we do in this course, excerpting different parts. It's a very rapid run through with the idea that you'll have these slides available to you if you want to spend any time looking over them. We show a lot of charts, and if you don't like charts, you might want to consider some option other than business school, because we tend to focus on quantitative analysis, but we also do a lot of discussion. And in my experience, that's a far better way of learning than just copying down what professors write either on the physical board or an electronic board. And thank you for your patience in listening to me.
Thank you, Professor. This was extremely insightful. It took me back to my B school days. And this is how teaching takes place at the top B school. So those of you who are in the session now and you experience the teaching, this is how teaching takes place at top world-class B schools. And this was a great sample of that. So thank you, Professor. Thank you for doing that. So there are some questions coming in, and those are tending to be a little political in nature. So I want to stay away from those, but ask you something more relevant over here. The George Washington University School of Business is based in Washington, D.C. And of course, the US government is based there. It's the headquarters of a lot of global multilateral organizations like IMF and so on and so forth. When you teach a course at GWSB, how do you leverage such accessibility to such global organizations?
Oh yeah, that's a great question. So even in this world of Zoom, and I appreciate everybody being on Zoom, there's nothing like in-person contact. And so there's a couple of things. First is we have people in our class come to class. So we're having somebody in a couple of weeks come to talk about the use of strategic petroleum reserves as a way to fight oil price volatility. And this guy works for the US government, and he's in charge of the part of the Department of Energy that runs the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. So if you like, he's the insider, and he's also a graduate of GW. So a lot of our graduates are working in Washington. We take advantage of them. The other thing we do is that because the embassies are here, we have a lot of international students, and a lot of students do internships either with their embassies or they do them with NGOs or with local companies. And so we get people who jobs and internships in part because we're right where the government is. And lots of people in business pretend that the government isn't there. The government is pervasive in business, and the government worldwide has become more important since the start of the pandemic. The vaccines and the controversy of vaccines around the world, where do you think all those free vaccines come from? Who do you think pays for all those free vaccines in whatever country you are? Those vaccines in the United States, no one pays for their COVID vaccine. They're paid for by the government, who also funded the development of it. So if you come to Washington to study, whether you come to GW to one of our unnamed competitors, you're in the part of the United States that is directly there with the government, and the government makes a tremendous difference for business. And the job of the manager is to try to figure out how to deal with that in terms of running her company.
That's perfect. Thank you for sharing that. As Professor mentioned, right, GWSB is in Washington, D.C., the heart or the base of the US government, and that has access to a lot of these multilateral and political organizations as well. I am going to skip most of the questions because they are tending to be, there's a lot of news going on in Indian media about India buying, or in global media about India buying Russian oil during the conflict as well, and the External Affairs Minister giving some rebuttals for those. So I don't want to get dragged into those, but what I want to do over here, right, is bring in Megan from the admissions team of GWSB to tell us more about the programs that are offered by GW, and if any of you are interested in making a career in international business or studying management as such, then giving you an insight about what GWSB does. So I'm going to bring in Megan over here. And with that, I also want to thank Dr. Weiner for doing this session. This has been extremely insightful. As I said, I studied something similar during my MBA program and really enjoyed this perspective. As I said, such situations, this perspective is important for everyone looking to make a career in business management, even if you're not getting into public policy or public administration. This has larger implications for global business, and such sessions are extremely insightful. So thank you, Dr. Weiner. Thank you for taking us through your presentation. And I want to bring in Megan as well into the session now.
Thank you very much, Sanjay. And thank you so much for attending this presentation. Take care.
Thank you. You have a great day. And Megan, over to you. So to those of you who are still in the session, I see around 270 of you still here. So don't go anywhere. GWSB, or George Washington University School of Business, is the professional business school of George Washington University based in Washington, D.C. It is ranked amongst the top B schools in the United States, both for its undergraduate and graduate programs. As I mentioned, the campus is adjacent to some of the world's leading financial institutions, including the US Federal Reserve, the World Bank, and the International Monetary Fund. It offers over 13 master's programs. So a lot of choices over there, right from accountancy to finance to international business to general marketing management, project management, sports management, tourism, hospitality, and so on and so forth. So I really want to bring in Megan over here to tell us more about the programs offered by GWSV, and then maybe we talk about the admission criteria and how you can study at such world-class institutions. So over to you, Megan.
Thank you so much, Sanjay. And thank you everybody for joining today. It's great to see people from so many different locations in India and elsewhere. My name is Megan Van Sand. I'm an Associate Director of Admissions and Recruitment here at the George Washington University School of Business. And so I'm going to give a presentation just explaining a little bit more about the different programs that we have to offer, how to apply, etc. So I'm just going to share my screen and we will get started. Alrighty, so I'm going to speak today about our MBA programs as well as our specialized masters, of which Dr. Weiner is our faculty director for our specialized masters, the MS in International Business. And we are, of course, named after the first president of the United States, George Washington. And George Washington had actually advocated for the creation of a national university in the nation's capital. And we were established by a congressional charter in 1821. We're one of just a handful of universities in the United States that were established with a congressional charter. So we are now over 200 years old. And you can see sort of where we are located. This is, if you go to our website, you can actually do this virtual tour. But on the map of Washington, D.C., we are located around about in this area here. You can see the Washington Monument, all the museums, the World Bank and the IMF are around here as well. The Tidal Basin, the Jefferson Memorial, the National Mall, which ends with the Congress. So we really are very centrally located in Washington, D.C. We are metro accessible with public transportations. We're right by the Foggy Bottom Metro Station. And we spoke a bit about rankings earlier. Our MS in International Business program is, of course, currently ranked #1 in the United States and #2 worldwide. We are also #1 for the percentage of women in our global MBA program. So that's something that we're very proud of because we definitely want to promote and champion diversity, gender, racial, ethnic diversity in our classroom. We have a #2 ranked in the U.S. finance program. You can see further rankings here. We were actually recently ranked #5 among private universities in the U.S. In the category of value for money. And then, of course, we were ranked #2 by The Economist for faculty quality. Something that we are obviously very proud of here at GW is the caliber of our faculty, such as Dr. Weiner. Our faculty here at the School of Business are frequently quoted in such publications as Bloomberg, Forbes, New York Times, Reuters, Harvard Business Review, and are frequently sought after for their commentary. All right, so what programs can you study here? We have 2 full-time MBA formats. We have the Global MBA, and then we have the Accelerated MBA. The Accelerated MBA international students can be in either of those programs. Accelerated MBA meets on Saturdays and Wednesdays. It's for students who are a bit further along in their career. There's also a STEM format of both the Global MBA and the Accelerated MBA. For our specialized masters, you can see the list there. We have master's programs in everything as varied as sport management to applied finance. All of the degrees with an asterisk next to them are STEM designated. So project management, interdisciplinary business studies, information systems technology, finance, applied finance, business analytics, and accountancy. With accountancy, I do want to point out that we have two tracks. We have the Master of Accountancy, or Standard Master of Accountancy, which is not STEM designated. And then we have a STEM designated track that you can apply for, which is the Master of Accountancy with a major in accounting analytics. We also have 20+ graduate certificates. International students cannot apply to a graduate certificate as just a standalone program. You would have to apply to a degree. We cannot issue I-20s for graduate certificate admission. However, with some of our degrees, you can use your elective credits to earn a graduate certificate on top of your master's. And our MS in Interdisciplinary Business Studies, you actually get to combine 2 graduate certificates to create that degree. And again, just some more highlights about the GW School of Business and our programs and what makes us unique and different. As I had mentioned previously, our world-class faculty, our innovative curriculum, which you got to have a taste of with Dr. Weiner's presentation. Everything is definitely taught from sort of a global perspective. We also have a large focus on technology and analytics. We want to make sure that our students are prepared for the job field and are getting the latest knowledge in tech and analytics, whether that be in marketing, in business analytics, in information systems technology. We also have a large focus on experiential learning. There are a lot of opportunities to get involved outside of the classroom. We offer study abroad programs, a lot of project-based group work. We, of course, have our dedicated career center, the Fowler Career Center, which is only for GW School of Business students. We have many affinity and industry clubs, events. We have, for example, a student chapter of the Society of Human Resource Management that many of our human resource students participate in. We also have an international business club. We have a very extensive and involved alumni network, alumni located throughout the world who are always willing to connect with our current students. And we have very flexible and customizable degrees. We have the 20+ graduate certificates. So for example, our MS in Management program, students have required courses, and then they can take 12 electives. So they can use their 12 elective credits to earn one of our graduate certificates as well. We have over 200 electives in the School of Business that you can choose from for your elective credits. You can bring up to 6 credits from a school outside of the School of Business. We offer also joint and dual degrees. So for example, you can do a dual MBA and Master of Human Resource Management, or a dual MBA and MS in Information Systems Technology. We also offer, through our Office of Global and Experiential Education, study abroad, as well as some study in other locations in the US. There are short-term programs, which are generally around 10 days and are usually held in summer, spring break, or winter break. And we also have the long-term exchange programs. So with some degrees, such as the MS in International Business, you would have the opportunity to do a semester-long study abroad at one of our partner business schools. And we, of course, have our Fowler Career Center. The Fowler Career Center is devoted solely to assisting School of Business students. We encourage students to meet with them early on in their academic career here. They really are here to help you as you research career options, as you work on your resume, on your cover letter, on your networking skills. There are career counselors who you can certainly make an appointment with, who can assist you. They also host employer interview days. For example, Deloitte, I'm sure you've heard of the consulting company. They were here a couple months ago doing on-campus interviews. So they have relations with employers throughout the area, and they can also introduce you to alumni. Alumni in this area, somewhere else in the US or overseas, who are working in the career or in the company that you may be interested in, and they can help facilitate that connection and assist with networking for you. And these are just a sample of companies, private industry, government, NGO, nonprofit, where we currently have students who have landed after completing their degree with us. I'm sure you recognize a lot of the names on this screen. And a definite advantage of GW being located in the Washington, D.C. area is that this is such a dynamic and growing area. We are where business and private industry and government really intersect. So you can see here a lot of different consulting corporations such as Booz Allen Hamilton. Amazon has also recently opened up large headquarters here. A lot of private industry. Also, we have the World Bank and the IMF, which are just located down the street from us. Financial organizations, Capital One has a huge headquarters that's just about a 45-minute drive from the campus. So yeah, lots of opportunity and lots of opportunities to, of course, connect with the alumni who are already working in these organizations. And no matter where you land in the world after completing your degree with us, whether that be back in India or somewhere else, there is an alumni network there that you can tap into. These are just some examples of where we have alumni networks throughout the world. All right, so let's talk a bit more about how to actually complete and submit your application. So we do require an English proficiency test score for applicants from India. The only way to have your test score requirement waived would be if you hold a degree from the US, UK, Anglophone Canada, Australia, New Zealand, Ireland, etc. We will accept the TOEFL, the IELTS, Duolingo, or the Pearson Test of English. And the test scores that you see on the screen are our sort of optimal scores. If you have 90 to 99 on TOEFL, 6 or 6.5 on IELTS, or 110 or 115 on Duolingo, you could still be admitted. It would just be admission with the condition that you take an English course in your first semester. And if your transcript is from an institution that is not in the United States, you will need to submit a transcript evaluation. This can be done by any institution that is a member of the National Association of Credential Evaluation Services. You may have heard of WES, ACE, or Spantran, Joseph Silney. Any of those are acceptable. And it is okay to go ahead and submit your application before we have your English proficiency test score, and before you have your transcript evaluation. Your application will just be in a pending state until those things are received. And I want to point your attention to the bottom right of the screen. You'll see a code there. That is a code that you can use to submit your application for free. When you come to the end of your application, if you click on Save and Pay, and then you select Use a Fee Waiver Code, you can then enter that code. Our operations team here will see that you've put in the code, and they will manually submit your application without the payment. So very important, of course, is funding your education. The tuition cost for our specialized master's programs is currently $56,000 to around $68,000 US. It's $1,885 per credit. And most of our master's programs are 30 to 33 credits. The Master of MS in Finance and MS in Applied Finance are a bit more. For the global MBA, that is a fixed rate of currently around $117,000. Now, scholarships are available. They are merit-based, and they are decided at the time of admission. So there's nothing separate that you need to do to be considered for a scholarship. You will automatically be considered. And if it's decided that you will be admitted, at that time, it's also decided if you'll be admitted with any funding. If you are admitted with funding, it will state that in your letter of admission, and it's always given as a percentage. So for example, if you are admitted and your letter says you have a 20% fellowship, that means that each semester you're registered for, 20% of your tuition will be covered by that fellowship. So that is our merit-based scholarship process. There are also international loan options available. There are two loan companies, Empower and Prodigy, that we frequently see students utilizing, and those companies are both very familiar with GW and with our programs. We get a lot of questions about assistantships. Assistantships are not something that would be given as part of your admission package. They are posted at the beginning of the semester, any open assistantship positions. And as a new student, you could certainly apply for one, but it is not guaranteed that you would get an assistantship. It's something that you would apply for once you arrived on campus. Right, and so that is just kind of a brief overview of our university and our programs and what makes us unique, and how to apply. We are accepting applications right now for the fall 2023 semester, which will start on August 24th. We have an application deadline coming up on March 1st, but there will be another deadline after that. But we, of course, encourage you to submit your application by March 1st if you're interested in starting in fall. This is our general business school email if you have any questions. I'm also going to put my email address in the chat. Feel free to reach out to me. And I also wanted to let you know that we will be hosting a virtual open house this Saturday that we would love to see you at. There will be the opportunity to hear from staff of Global and Experiential Education, the Career Center, to ask questions, hear about our master's programs and our MBA programs. It's going to be, again, this Saturday at 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So we would love for you to attend, and I will put that link in the chat box as well.
Great. Thank you, Megan. Thank you for doing that. And I already posted this in the chat box as well. So GWSB, and Megan showed this as well. GWSB, besides the MBA programs, offers 13 specialized master's programs, right from Masters of Accountancy, Applied Finance, Business Analytics, to the very interesting topic that we spoke about, which is around international business. So if you are looking to study at a world-class business school in the heart of United States, quite literally the capital city of the United States, then GWSB is possibly the place for you to go. She also showed the application fee waiver code. So if you're applying to GWSB, you can use the exclusive application fee waiver code, which is being offered to the attendees of today's session. The code is GOSEED0231. I have also posted this in the chat window. So if you want to use that code, you can go ahead and submit your application using that code to GWSB for free. Megan has also shared her email address. I'm just going to share this with everyone who's there in the window as well. So I've shared her email address as well. If you have any queries, please do reach out. Megan, if you can also give the link to the open house, which is happening on February 25th, this Saturday, that would be great. Maybe some of them would like to attend and get to know more about GWSB. So great. I'm going to recopy that code as well and post it in the chat box. So great. Thank you everyone for attending. There are some questions which have come in, and there are quite a few of those over here. The first question, Megan, that I have is around the GRE GMAT score. So we understand that GWSB is currently GRE or GMAT optional, but is there an advantage for someone applying with a GMAT or a GRE score? or do you recommend them to apply with a score if they have one?
If you have a score that you are pleased with, we would certainly advise that you send it to us. It would only, help your application. But if you do not submit a GRE or GMAT score, you would definitely not be penalized for that. That would not harm your application.
All right. So thank you for that. And Rahul, I see your comment in the chat window as well. If there's a disadvantage, as Megan said, there's no disadvantage if you don't apply with a score. And if you have a score, very well, go ahead and submit it. You never know, it may add value. Megan, the next question I have is around the job market. And we did a similar session yesterday around the job market in the US. So we are hearing a lot of news around tech layoffs in the US. So Meta is talking about doing some massive layoffs. Google has done some as well. Amazon has done some as well. Being based in DC, do you have any insights into the job market and what's happening over there? Are you seeing any impact on the employment figures for the current cohort when it comes to GWSB?
Okay. So yeah, the tech layoffs was pretty recent news. So I don't have any particular information about how that would affect current students. What we do see with a lot of tech companies is sometimes they might lay off people from particular types of positions, but then be hiring for another type of position. Also, here in the DC area, we are in a bit of what we call a bubble in terms of the economy and recessions, because a lot of industry here, private industry, has contracts with the federal government. We do tend to see ourselves as being a little bit recession proof, not fully recession proof, but we do tend to be insulated from a bit of those economic shocks. So we are in a good position for that because so much of the business here is private industry is working on governmental contracts.
Interesting. And Megan, we have been hearing about Amazon's second headquarters in the US coming up in Washington, DC. I understand it's right across the
Yes.
river.
Yeah, it's right across the river in Arlington, Virginia. So it's just literally just a couple metro stops away.
All right. And Megan, one question from Tejasvi over here. He's got a 3-year undergraduate degree. Do you accept those? Or does the person need to add on a 1-year postgraduate diploma or a master's program in India before applying for an MBA program or a master's program at GWSB?
Sure. Yes, good question. Yeah, we are aware that Indian degrees that are not a Bachelor of Engineering or Bachelor of Technology are frequently 3 years. So we do require a transcript evaluation from a transcript evaluation company. If your transcript evaluation equates your 3-year Indian bachelor's to a 4-year US degree, then you would be considered eligible to apply.
And make it in case that's not the case, then what are the options does the student have? We understand they can also do a postgraduate diploma or a master's program in India. And
yeah, if someone, for example, has a 3-year bachelor's degree plus a 1-year postgraduate diploma, we would certainly consider that to be equivalent to a bachelor's. Or yes, we have seen students before who have a 3-year degree and are enrolled in the first year of a master's program.
All right, great. So Tejasvi, I hope this answers, gives you clarity as well. My last question, which I have, this is from Harshit. He's an Indian student, wants to pursue a career in public policy. I understand GW doesn't have a master's in public policy, especially the business school doesn't, but you have a master's in international business. So would you recommend that to someone? And if let's say, I understand there are so many 13 course options, so it's difficult to know the course structure for all of those. Would you recommend that these guys get in touch with any of the program officers for that particular course, or check out the website, or where else can they find more information about these specific programs?
Sure. So for the MS in International Business, Harshit, if you have any background in economics and you have an interest in economics and finance, I would definitely recommend looking more into the MS in International Business. Otherwise, we do have an MS in Management course that may be of interest. That's less finance and economics heavy than the MS in international business. I would advise you on the link where the virtual open house is. If you click on that link, that takes you to our graduate admissions events page. And in addition to our online open house, we also have regularly scheduled online information sessions. So you can select, whatever programs you think might be of interest to you, and then register for one of the online information sessions about that program.
All right, great. Thanks, Megan. Thanks for that. We are done with the questions for today evening. Those of you who are still in the room, as Megan said, the deadline is March 1st. The next round deadline is March 1st. So you still have around a week there to make an application if you're looking to do that. The application fee waiver code was shared in the chat window as well. So you can use that as well. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us or reach out to Megan. She's shared the email address already. Reach out to them with your questions and get clarity before making this move. So thank you all. Thank you for attending this session. I hope you found this useful. Thank you, Megan, for doing this session. And do convey our thanks to Dr. Weiner as well. His presentation was extremely insightful. I personally got to learn quite a bit out of it, and I'm sure our audience did as well. So do convey our thanks to him as well. And you have a great day over there. Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you to the audience. Have a great evening over here. I hope you found this session useful. And do keep attending such sessions. It's always good to get such insights from experts in the industry. So thank you, everyone, for being here. And Megan, you have a great day over there. Take care.
Okay. Bye-bye.